والعود أحمد لنستكمل لقائنا مع متحدثينا. هذه المرة متحدثتنا حاصلة على ماجستير الآداب في دراسات المرأة والمجتمع والتنمية من جامعة حمد بن خليفة في قطر، حيث أجرت بحثها حول الهجرة، الجندر ودراسات الخليج، المواطنة والعلاقات المتبادلة العابرة للحدود الوطنية قطر وإيران. فلنرحب بالأستاذة حميدة دورزادة.
This is my brother, Walid. He was my support system. Walid truly believed in me, and he is the reason why I'm here today. Around the time of my high school midterms, I lost Walid to cancer. This was a heavy loss for me, one I never recovered from. Remembering his words of "you can do it" was all I needed to be motivated and get through this time. He was the backbone of my family. But for me, he was the reason and the person who pushed me to go to university. His support was so important to me because my parents could not read nor write, and I was the first person in my family to go to university. As a first-generation student, I had to learn through the many mistakes I made. After all, this whole journey was new to me. I started my master's in Hamid bin Khalifa University in Gender Studies. My choice of program was derived from my own background. I wanted to better understand the world and myself in it. Within a span of a year, I learned so many research tools, methods, theories to craft my own research project. I felt it's going to be easy. I thought that it's going to be a piece of cake for me, but it ended up being the most challenging assignment. My master's thesis focused on the Baluch community in Qatar. The Baluch are an ethnic community spread across Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. They are a minority in all of these countries. My research focused on the Baluch from Iran who are long-term residents in Qatar, a community that I come from. So there's a lot of misconceptions about the Baluch, which made me feel so uneasy about who I am. So I decided to write about the community, their migration, issues of belonging, identity, and citizenship in a country that they have lived for generations in a very temporary state. My research was the first of its kind. There was nothing written about the Baluch in Qatar, and the literature lacked in-depth studies on their lives. Their research was the focal point of my study. And I was so motivated and passionate about my research because it was so close to my heart. Yet, this sense of social responsibility towards my project made it a very heavy one for me and difficult. So I decided that, I'm gonna focus on the Baluch community. But at the same time, I was so afraid that I'm not gonna do justice to my community. And on top of my insecurities and doing ethnographic work for the first time, I was working full-time in a research center. Luckily, I had a good supervisor who believed in me and who made me think realistically about the whole process. One day, I wrote to her an email talking about the challenges that I was facing as both a full-time student and an employee. I was on the verge of giving up. I felt like a failure for even opening up to her. This feeling of giving up is so common among graduate students, which I didn't know at the time. So she responded to my email by saying, "Accept that sometimes you can't deliver to the standards that you have set for yourself. It's important to have the doubts that you're going through now. This is a sign of a good researcher who connects and thinks through the complexities of her work. So don't see it as a strength. Don't see it as a weakness. It's a strength that will show in the final results." So as someone who was deeply insecure about my own writing and researching about my own community, this was an important piece of advice that made me think realistically about the whole research process and writing and my own goals. So to get over this fear of writing and write the actual thesis, I used 4 strategies that helped me get through my fear of writing. And they were inspired by my advisor. First, I had to start in smaller chunks. I had to turn the project into pieces. I started chapter by chapter. Second is to give yourself fixed and non-negotiable deadlines, which meant that I had to honor those deadlines no matter what. Third, which might be a bit cliche, is to keep in mind that a thesis is never a finished work. Fourth, which I think it was so important to me at that time, is to remind yourself why you're here and what your purpose is. So even after graduation, when I had to write 2 pieces of writing based on my master's degree on the Baluch community, I was still finding it difficult to write, even though my job requires me to write and research. I mean, how ironic is that? What I'm trying to say here is that we have to accept that writing is a process. We have to acknowledge that it will never be easy. This is why I'm here today, to be vulnerable with you and to help others who are going through the same challenges that I went through. The first draft will never be perfect, and this thought of writing being a process rather than perfect helped me get through my writer's block. My experience taught me to be easy on myself and to learn that all of this is part of a journey to become a better researcher and writer. Sometimes our high standards betray us and leave us with unmet expectations. While it's good to have a set of standards for ourselves, it's important to remind ourselves that this is just the beginning. And for me, I had to always remind myself and be realistic about the whole process. I just had my first article on the Baluch community published. I swear, when I published it, I was so afraid to read it again and think that I would find typos. I did find typos, obviously. But none of that was important to me. The most important thing was that I shared my knowledge. I have a growth mindset now, which allows me to work harder next time and be kind to myself. And most importantly, I had to remind myself that my brother will be proud of me and proud of the contributions that I made and my strength against all odds. Thank you for listening.